My husband, James Scott, never truly saw me as an individual. I was a trophy, a stunning ornament in his empire, the ideal spouse to enhance his multimillion-dollar existence. That evening, as I observed him twirl his latest, youthful conquest across the dance floor, my palm naturally pressed against my abdomen, guarding the secret I had been saving for the right instant to reveal. He swayed as though I didn't exist, as if our whole marriage meant nothing. He had no idea that, for me, this wasn't a conclusion. It was a timer ticking down, and by dawn, both his spouse and his meticulously built empire would vanish. The crystal chandeliers in the Fairmont Chicago's Imperial Ballroom cascaded illumination over the city's upper crust. It was the yearly Starlight Foundation Gala, the dazzling peak of the charity calendar, and I, Sharon Russ, was performing my role flawlessly. My emerald silk dress, a bespoke creation by a designer James had personally selected, hugged a figure that concealed the most significant mystery of my existence. At 3 months along, it was still just a hint of emerging truth, a confidence shared with no one else. James had always been a mesmerizing dancer. It was among the initial qualities that enchanted me when we met at a college charity event 10 years earlier. That night, his tailored tuxedo molded to his toned physique like it was part of him as he guided Rochelle Cherry through a complex, intense tango. Her scarlet gown sliced through the ballroom's subdued sophistication like a bold challenge, a shade picked to demand attention, to possess. They flowed together, a unified, blazing force, their forms telling a tale of hidden rendezvous and mutual cravings. They look stunning together, don't they? A voice murmured nearby. Melissa Vance, spouse of one of James's subordinate partners, clutched her martini like a blade. Her gaze, though, wasn't fixed on the pair dancing, but on me, probing for any fracture in my poise. James has always valued a companion who can match his pace. I responded, my tone a masterpiece of serenity. I took a deliberate sip of my sparkling water, the fizz dancing on my tongue, a sharp opposite to the bitterness roiling in my stomach. For half a year I had been aware. It began with the trace of a fragrance that wasn't mine, lingering on his collars, the overnight office sessions that dragged into dawns, the bank records I, with my overlooked architecture degree and sharp eye for specifics, had begun to examine closely. Rochelle wasn't merely a sign of a crumbling union. She was a calculated addition. As a junior analyst at a competing company, her insider knowledge was nearly as enticing to James as her freshness. He glanced my way then, his eyes darting in my direction for a mere heartbeat across the packed floor. There was no remorse in his stare, only a quick, barely noticeable irritation, as if my being there was a slight hassle he needed to handle. He whirled Rochelle, her giggles ringing out, and in that instant, I wasn't his partner. I was a spectator he had neglected to excuse. The burden of the platinum wedding band on my finger felt unbearably dense, a chain binding me to her existence that had gradually smothered me. He had persuaded me to shelve my own architecture practice. Just temporarily, Sharon, he'd said, his words slick as syrup, until Scott Capital is secure. Then we'll pursue your vision. The years slipped by, Scott Capital rose to dominance in private equity, and my designs collected dust in a neglected nook of our Lincoln Park townhouse. My ambition had turned into my quaint pastime. I navigated through the crowd, the buzz of talks about market trades and vacationing in the Hamptons blurring into a muted hum. I ended up at a quiet, empty high-top table close to the dance area's border. The band shifted to a gentler, more personal tune. James drew Rochelle nearer, his palm spread claiming on the dip of her back. Her head settled on his shoulder, their faces, so near they shared the same breath. This was the instant, the one I had practiced in my head countless times. The irreversible step. I slid the ring off my finger. The metal felt cold against my skin, a stark difference from the fire of my determination. It was a magnificent ring, a perfect 5-carat diamond James had offered as proof of his eternal devotion. It was, I now understood, simply another asset meant to grow in worth and ensure my obedience. I approached the dance floor's edge, right in their path as they rotated. James's eyes widened a fraction, a flash of bewilderment crossing his flawless mask. Rochelle's victorious grin wavered as she noticed me advancing. Sharon, James said, his tone hushed and edged with caution. What are you doing? I was simply enjoying the display, I replied, my words firm and resonant, slicing through the melody. It's quite the spectacle. I stepped beyond them, to the spot where they had abandoned their champagne glasses. With a gentle, intentional clink that appeared to hush the whole room, I set my wedding ring on the gleaming surface next to his flute. Continue dancing, James, I said softly, my eyes locking with his. For the first time in years, I felt no dread, only a vast, freeing void. My hand drifted downward, pausing briefly on the soft swell of my midsection. You won't even register my absence. I turned before he could muster a reply, before his brain could grasp the open rebellion, the absolute boldness of my move. I walked, not fled, through the dividing wave of watchers, my posture erect, my chin lifted. Behind me, I sensed the wave of disorder, the initial shake in the quake that would soon demolish James Scott's impeccable realm. He wouldn't reach me. By the time he extricated himself from his lover and his ego, I would be a shadow, en route to a life I had carefully planned without him. A life for two. The sleek, unmarked black sedan waited at the east service entry of the Fairmont, exactly as arranged. The drive. Dividing wave of watchers, my posture erect, my chin lifted. Behind me, I sensed the wave of disorder, the initial shake in the quake that would soon demolish James Scott's impeccable realm. He wouldn't reach me. By the time he extricated himself from his lover and his ego, I would be a shadow, en route to a life I had carefully planned without him. A life for two. The sleek, unmarked black sedan waited at the east service entry of the Fairmont, exactly as arranged. The driver, Daniel Wilson, didn't glance at me as I slipped into the front seat. His attention stayed on the rearview mirror, his face a shield of steady focus. Daniel and I had been close since university, long before James appeared. He was a cybersecurity expert, someone who viewed the world in codes and hidden entries, and the sole person aware of the complete reality of my luxurious trap. You pulled it off, he said, his voice quiet as he eased away from the curb, blending effortlessly into Chicago's flowing traffic. Are you all right? I'm freer than I've felt in 10 years, I murmured, the rush of the past minutes starting to ebb, leaving a hollow, thrumming emptiness. I fought the impulse to glance back at the sparkling hotel, the existence it symbolized. It didn't merit a last look. Daniel's loyalty was one of the rare things James had never succeeded in buying or belittling. He'd attempted, naturally, labeling Daniel as my geeky tech pal, with a casual flick of his wrist. But Daniel had seen through James from the start. He doesn't see you, Daniel had warned me once, years back after a dinner gathering. He looks through you at what you mirror for him. I had been upset then. Now the precision of his words was a sobering solace. The vehicle purred along Lakeshore Drive, the city's horizon a stunning display of glow and metal. It was the place where I dreamed of creating, of etching my legacy with towers of glass and steel. Now I was abandoning it, a runaway from my own story. He's going to phone, Daniel said, shattering the quiet. He's likely flooding your line already. I dug into my purse, retrieved the rose gold iPhone James had gifted me for my birthday, and shut it down without hesitation. Let him try. By morning, this line will be gone. The recollection emerged. Uninvited, it was our second wedding anniversary. We were in our partially settled Lincoln Park townhouse, encircled by packing crates. I had just secured my first big solo project, a restoration for a landmark downtown library. I was thrilled, unrolling the plans across our new dining surface, my voice vibrant with enthusiasm as I described my ideas for the building. James had paid attention for roughly 3 minutes, a courteous, empty grin on his face. Then he'd carefully rolled my plans back up. That's lovely, darling. A nice side interest to occupy you, he'd said. Now, regarding the Alderman's fundraiser next month, I need you to lead the organizing team. It's vital for Scott Capital's growth. I recalled the breath escaping me, the way my joy had shriveled under his offhand diminishment. A side interest. All my training, my drive, my skill shrunk to a side interest. That was the moment I first grasped our bond wasn't a partnership. It was a business, with him as chairman and me as the elegantly appointed, uncompensated director of events. The sacrifices started there, minor at first, then all-encompassing. I paused my practice. I headed his committees. I entertained his associates. I shaped our world to be a perfect stage for his drive. I had become the designer of my own confinement. "We're going north," Daniel said, drawing me from the memory. "The cottage in Wisconsin is prepared. You'll be secure there for a few days while we launch the next step." "And the packet?" I asked, my tone strained. "In the glove box, new identity, new device, and the codes for the funds." I opened it. Inside lay a driver's license for an Anna Cole. The picture showed me, yet not me. Her hair was a warm blonde, her look blank and enigmatic. There was a debit card from a Zurich bank, and a slim, secured smartphone. Anna Cole. It sounded foreign in my mind, the identity of an unknown who would soon be my lifeline. "He'll figure you headed to your folks in Naples," Daniel said, accurately forecasting James's straightforward, conceited logic. "Or that you're holed up at a luxury retreat. He won't search for you in a simple cabin 3 states over. He believes you're helpless without room service." He was correct. James's view of me was his biggest blind spot and my strongest edge. He perceived a delicate, ornamental wife. He was about to encounter the woman he had suppressed under layers of disregard and patronizing. As we passed the state border, the urban glow yielding to the deep black of rural night, I considered the sonogram image tucked in my wallet, a small, pulsing speck of potential. James was clueless about it. I had intended to share it tonight, a last-ditch effort to check if any decency remained in the man I'd wed. His tango with Rochelle had been the harsh reply. This wasn't merely a getaway now. It was a liberation operation. I was rescuing not only myself, but the baby who merited arrival in a world unbound by its father's oppressive influence. The specter of Sharon Russ was dissolving with every mile we covered, and rising in her stead was Anna Cole, shaped by deceit and driven by a mother's relentless, unbreakable devotion. The cottage was tucked far into Wisconsin's Northwoods, a simple A-frame building that carried the scent of evergreen and burning logs. It belonged to a front company Daniel had established years prior, a virtual stronghold with a real location. Inside, flames already danced in the stone fireplace. It was basic, cozy, and more welcoming than the perfectly styled townhouse I'd abandoned. "Your emergency bag is in the bedroom," Daniel said, setting a laptop on the sturdy oak coffee table. "Basics are packed. The rest of your belongings will have to write them off as battle losses." I pictured my architecture texts, my drawing board, the incomplete scale models of structures that would never rise. They weren't mere objects. They were fragments of a self I had permitted to be severed. "It's okay," I said, my voice catching slightly. "They were part of someone else." Daniel opened the laptop. "All right, phase 2. The overseas account is live. The initial transfer went through an hour ago. Precisely half of all rightful, accessible shared wealth. Nothing more, nothing less." For months, with the discreet aid of a forensic accountant Daniel had cleared, I had been mapping the maze of our money. I painstakingly divided the funds we had built and saved together from the murky deals and hidden accounts James had set up unbeknownst to me. I was claiming only what was rightfully mine. The remainder, the proof of his deceit, was my safeguard. "The failsafe is activated," Daniel went on, his fingers racing over the keys. It was his concept. A protected cloud repository contained duplicates of every damning file I had uncovered. If I failed to enter a particular code every 72 hours, the full dossier would auto-send to the board of Scott Capital, the SEC, and the lead finance reporter at the Chicago Tribune.it was a digital guillotine poised above James's empire. I collapsed onto the faded leather couch, the fire's heat a small mercy against my skin. The surge of adrenaline had drained away, leaving a crushing fatigue that reached my bones. Now that the flight was real, the full weight of what I had done, and what he had done to me, slammed into me like a collapsing wall. The fling with Rochelle was the loudest betrayal, but it wasn't the blade that ended us. The fatal strike had landed 3 months earlier. James was supposedly at a partner's retreat in Aspen. I was hunting through his study for old tax files when my fingers grazed a warped floorboard under his desk. My architect's instinct had always registered. Somewhere Anna Cole could raise towers again. Not just for herself, but for the small heartbeat inside her. "Thank you, Daniel," I whispered, the words too small for the debt. "I know you couldn't have." I cut him off gently. "You would have done it for me. Now let me sleep. Tomorrow the real fight starts." In the cabin's narrow guest room, wind whispering through the pines, I felt the first flutter low in my belly. Quiet, stubborn kick. A vow. I wasn't only fleeing a husband. I was sprinting toward a life. And for the first time in years, I would be its only designer. The encrypted phone jolted me awake. The clock glowed. 7:12 a.m. Sunlight striped the plank floor. Daniel's voice was stripped of warmth. "He's accelerating. He's already contacted the police." I bolted upright, pulse hammering. "They'll make him wait 24 hours. Adults can leave." "Usually," Daniel said. "But James Scott doesn't play usual. He wrote a $500,000 check to the police chief's campaign last year. They're treating it as a critical missing person case. He's selling the grieving husband act with Oscar-level commitment." I slid down my spine. I'd underestimated his shameless reach, his talent for twisting institutions built to shield people. I stumbled to the living room. The small TV flickered on a cable news loop. There he was, James on the brownstone steps, face arranged in tragic lines. No sign of Rochelle. Charcoal suit, voice trembling just enough. "I'm pleading for my wife's safe return," he told the microphones. "Sharon has been under terrible strain. She hasn't seemed herself. I'm terrified she's lost, frightened. Anyone with information, please call the police. We just want her home." Strain, lost, frightened. Each word a scalpel meant to slice away my credibility before I could open my mouth. He was scripting the story. I wasn't a woman who walked away from abuse. I was a fragile wife who'd cracked. Masterful. Demonic. Classic playbook, Daniel said through the speaker. If he can't play savior, he plays martyr. It gets uglier. He's posted a $50,000 reward. 50 grand. Enough to turn every truck stop clerk, motel manager, and curtain twitcher from here to the Atlantic into bounty hunters. My cloak of invisibility was shredding in real time. "They've pinged your old phone to the Fairmont," Daniel added. "They're pulling every camera in a 5-block radius. My car is on tape." "Ditch it," I said. "Already handled. Meeting a guy in Milwaukee who makes Vince evaporate. But this compresses the timeline, Sharon. Full transformation and wheels up by noon." I caught my reflection in the black TV screen. Dark hair. Familiar Anglais. The face of a missing woman. Target. In the bathroom, Daniel's kit weighted like surgical steel. Honey blonde dye. Azel contact. Contour kits meant to redraw bone structure. Sharon had to die visually right now, and the death had to be flawless. While the chemical scent of dye stung the air, I replayed James's press conference. He was a virtuoso of control, not just of money, but of perception. He'd spent years convincing me my dreams were cute hobbies next to his empire. Now he was gaslighting an entire city. The old me, the one who chose linens and smiled for photos, felt like a ghost from another lifetime. That woman would have crumbled. Anna Cole did not crumble. She calculated. I rinsed the dye, watching black rivers spiral down the drain like the last of Sharon Russ. The phone vibrated again. Daniel had forwarded a push alert from a Chicago finance daily. Headline: Scott Capital unveils bold European push. London HQ slated for Q4. I went still, water dripping from blonde strands. The piece quoted James at length about global conquest. Published 2 days ago, the day before the gala. He'd been plotting a transatlantic leap, and never breathed a word. My brain fired connections like live wires. Second mortgage. Shadow LLC. Vanished funds. Not a firm play. Personal exodus money. Then another link. Luxury real estate blog. Headline like a fist. Knightsbridge penthouse snapped up for $8.5 million by U.S. tycoon. Photo attached. James on a sunlit balcony, London skyline behind him, grinning like a conqueror. Arm linked with his. Rochelle cherry. The floor dissolved. I'd been orchestrating my disappearance, convinced I was the chess master. Meanwhile, he'd been arranging his own vanishing act. New city, new company, new woman. My exit hadn't derailed him. It had simply jump-started his schedule. A cold, lethal rage replaced panic. Everything shifted. This wasn't about vanishing anymore. This was about surviving a man who'd planned to leave his pregnant wife buried in debt and disgrace. I stared at the blonde stranger in the mirror. Same eyes, but forged in new steel. Daniel, I said into the phone, voice flat and unbreakable. New plan. I'm not hunkering down in Wisconsin. Get me to London. Silence crackled. London, he repeated, awe creeping in. That's the nerve center of his new kingdom. Exactly, I said, conviction crystallizing. It's the last place he'll look. He's hunting a shattered woman cowering in rural America. No one will notice a sharp, self-assured architectural consultant launching a practice in London. They're hunting Sharon Russ. Anna Cole is invisible. My mind, architect mind, saw the cracks in his design. Arrogance was his load-bearing beam. Concealment was defense. London was offense. This is madness, Daniel whispered. But it's also genius. Pure sleight of hand. Commercial flights suicide, though. TSA facial recognition. James will have you on every alert list with a phone call. Then we go private, I said, toweling hair that no longer belonged to the woman on milk cartons. The change was shocking. Lighter hair rewrote my whole palette. I was already halfway someone else. There's a pipeline, Daniel said after a beat. Contacts from my world. Not mob.
Professionals.
They move people who need to cease existing for a while. Yacht from Milwaukee to Toronto. Private airstrip outside Thunder Bay. Gulfstream to a freight hub in Shannon, Ireland. From there, Eurostar to St. Pancras. No passport control that can be bought twice. Cost? I asked. More than we took, he admitted. But I have favors. And you have the dead man switch. James behaves, the files stay buried. He misbehaves. London tabloids get a bigger story than a missing heiress. Do it, I said. I slipped in the hazel contacts, blinked at the stranger staring back. Greenish eyes now. Higher cheekbones from subtle contour. A woman who belonged in first-class lounges and design conferences, not wanted posters. One more thing, Daniel said. Rochelle's pregnant. Confirmed by a Society column citing. Hand on a barely there bump at a charity polo match last week. James is building a whole new family before discarding the old one. The news should have broken me. Instead, it armored me. He wasn't just abandoning me. He was replacing me, replicating the life he'd convinced me to build for him with a younger model. Good, I said, voice like flint. Then he'll understand exactly how it feels when the foundation he's standing on suddenly disappears. I hung up, walked to the bedroom, and opened the go bag. Inside, new wardrobe, tailored blazers, silk blouses, Italian boots. The uniform of a woman who billed by the hour and never looked back. I dressed quickly. Anna Cole stepped into the mirror. Confident. Polished. Dangerous. By noon the cabin was empty. Fire extinguished. Tire tracks swept. A black SUV idled on the logging road. Daniel hugged me once, hard. See you in London, he said. Not if I see you first, I replied. The drive to Milwaukee blurred. Cornfields, billboards, ordinary lives I'd never live again. At the private marina, a white yacht waited, name freshly painted over. The captain never asked questions. As Lake Michigan swallowed Chicago's skyline, I stood on deck, wind.
Like, subscribe, and smash that bell before it smashes you. Stay with Reddit Tales Times for chilling twists, haunting tales, and daily doses of the disturbing. You've been warned.
Whipping blonde hair, hand resting instinctively on the small curve no one else could see yet. James thought he was the master builder. He was about to learn what happens when the architect he buried comes back to redesign his world. Down to the last load-bearing lie. By nightfall, I'd be over Canadian waters. By tomorrow, European soil. By the time James stepped off his private jet into Heathrow, Anna Cole would already be there, quietly leasing office space in Clerkenwell, scheduling meetings with developers who owed Daniel favors and waiting for the perfect moment to pull the first support beam. Because empires don't fall dramatically. They fall one calculated fracture at a time. And I had 9 months to plan the collapse.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss a twist. Stay tuned to Reddit Tales Times for your daily dose of drama, laughs, and unbelievable stories.